evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 11th Skills Workshop Virtual Careers Fair. For those of you that have been here before and followed the program since June, welcome back. And to anyone joining for the first time, also welcome to you. My name is Johan Murray, and I'm your host from Federated Hermes this evening. And alongside the 60 different firms, we helped create the Skills Workshop to give you the skills, the knowledge, and the insight that you need to prepare for a career within asset management. These workshops were created to help increase application success, and a reminder that all of our sessions are, in fact, free to register for. So the details will be in the chat box presently. Our virtual careers fair is like no other. And over the months of September and October, we've been featuring 41 different firms, every one single day for 1 hour, each telling you what they do, how they hire, what skills you need to demonstrate to stand out from other applicants to be successful. It is supposedly a crazy and competitive world out there. So last night, you heard from the real estate property asset management firm LaSalle, and tonight it's the turn of my very own firm, Federated Hermes. So joining me today are Vivian, Ursula, Tarandeep, and Manny, and between us, we will introduce our firm, talk about what we do, the different areas of our business, and so let me start by asking the team to introduce themselves. Tell us what you do and a little bit about yourself. And I'll start with you, Vivian, and then I'm going to ask Ursula, Tarandeep, and Manny to jump in. Over to you.
Sorry, ahead of myself. Hi, I'm Vivian Ayala. I am the head of inclusion. I started on the 1st of February. Something interesting about me, I like boxing. I don't go in the ring. I'm too pretty for that, but I like boxing.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ursula Henry. I am the Head of International Decision Support at Federated Hermes. I started on the 9th of August. Something interesting about me is I started my career in the financial services sector when I was 16 years old.
Hi, everybody. My name is Tarandeep, and I've been part of Federated Hermes for the past 6 years. And my role is a multi-asset research analyst within the investment office. Something interesting about me, I used to play semi-professional rugby. So yeah, look forward to speaking to you today.
Hey guys, I'm Manny. I am a category manager, which falls in within the procurement team. I've been at Federated Hermes for a little under 2 months now. Fun fact about me, I'm currently training to become a bodybuilder in a competition. So yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. As I said up at the top, I'm Johan Murray. I'm the Chief Investment Officer of the International Business of Federated Hermes. Been at the firm for nearly 7 years. And 2 fun facts about me. 1, I'd never get in a ring with Vivian. And 2, I'd never get in a rugby pitch with Tarandeep. Have you seen the size of him? So let me show you a very quick video of our boss, our chief executive, Sakrina Sabi, talking about what the international business of Federated Hermes is all about. And now let me see if I can master the technology.
Ever since our 1983 origin, our purpose has been to deliver sustainable wealth creation, generating wealth through investments that enrich investors, society, and the environment over the long term. From day one to the present day, this purpose drives everything we do. We aim to deliver sustainable outcomes for investors through our unique investment approach. Sustainable wealth creation is achieved through 4 core actions. First, high active share investment. We invest actively and with conviction over long time periods. Through intensive research, we form our own judgments on how assets can generate enduring investment and sustainability outcomes. These active views means that our portfolios are often very different to the benchmark indices, resulting in a high active share. This integrity in how we invest is vetted by our investment office. Second, best-in-class ESG integration in public and private markets, from equities and credit to private debt and real estate. We have integrated sustainability into the way we invest since 1983, and in 2006, led the group which drafted the principles for responsible investment. We were among the first to research the performance benefits of integrating environmental, social, and governance factors into investment decisions, and developed innovative tools to understand the ESG performance of assets. Seeking to advance best practice, we are expanding the depth of our ESG analysis and researching how this data can be captured in real time. Third, stewardship. Harnessing investor capital to change companies for good from within. Our stewardship team, EOS at Federated Hermes, is a pioneer of effective stewardship. With more than $1.2 trillion in assets under advice, it is one of the largest, most skilled and diverse teams in the industry, and has helped forge stewardship codes in developed and emerging markets. EOS engages companies on investors' long-term interests in a constructive way, cultivating relationships at the board and executive level to drive change. Its engagement insights, integrated alongside ESG analysis, empower our investment decisions. Fourth, our responsibility office, a breakthrough for the investment industry upon its 2014 launch. It remains exceptional today. Equal in influence to our investment office, it ensures that we integrate ESG and stewardship insights with integrity and continue to innovate. It also advocates public policy reform to promote sustainability in investment practice and the financial system. The delivery of sustainable wealth creation is driven by all employees at our firm and is overseen by our investment office, responsibility office, our stewardship service, EOS Federated Hermes, and myself. Seeking to fulfill this purpose, we have aligned company strategies and behaviors with the long-term holistic interests of investors. By doing so, we aim to deliver sustainable wealth creation through investments that enrich investors, society, and the environment over the long term.
So there we go, everybody. Hopefully now you all get a sense of who we all are and also where we're coming from. And a quick reminder that this is a webinar, so although we can't see your faces, we very much are looking forward to getting your questions. So please use the Q&A function to ask us any questions that you have, and I'll try to collate those, and we'll try and get through as many of your questions as possible. So without further ado, let's get into tonight's workshop. And again, I'm going to have to master screen sharing. So this is doubly challenging for me. Okay, and then if we go into screenplay mode, hopefully you can all see that. So our business is part of a bigger group called Federated Hermes Investments, headquartered in Pittsburgh. We were fully acquired by that business just a few months ago. And the international business of Federated Hermes, the piece that we all sit in, is headquartered in London. Overall, we are running assets under management of around $625 billion, whereas the assets under stewardship, the other side of the investment coin, i.e. once you've allocated the capital, how you look after it, we are looking after about 1.7 trillion, I believe it is. I can update that figure a little bit. Overall, about 2,000 employees with almost 600 investment and stewardship staff. So we have a diverse business, and that covers the active equity space, the fixed income space, the liquidity solutions or cash management space, private markets, which is everything from infrastructure to property, private equity and private debt, as well as the stewardship business that we have talked about. Our London headquartered international business has almost 600 people, about almost 300 investment and stewardship staff. And again, you can see the splits between the different asset classes here on this page. And virtually all of our stewardship work is done from our engagement team that is based here in London with support from around the globe. Our core premise is that investment is bettered by the inclusion of environmental, social, and governance information in addition to financial information. In the old days, we used to call it non-financial, but it turns out if you're investing over a long enough time horizon, then environmental issues matter greatly to financial outcomes. At the same time, we also know that by engaging with companies that we invest in, we are able to produce better outcomes for our end clients, pensioners and savers from around the world. One really good example from the private market space, property, that I wanted to share with you and will be familiar to many that either live or have traveled through London in the recent years, is King's Cross. Wind the clock back 15, 20 years, King's Cross was a rather horrible area of London, derelict in many parts. And we began with one of our larger clients to completely redevelop the King's Cross area, regenerating an important travel hub in the City of London. Not only have we produced, as a result of that, some pretty amazing investment returns for our clients, but maybe even more importantly, there have been some real societal and environmental benefits. And I've listed a few of them here for you. Ones that really stick out for me were the creation of apprenticeships on the building works themselves. And those same apprentices now that lived locally in the King's Cross area have gone on to work in other similar developments around London. So being able to not only generate strong financial returns, but also societal and environmental benefits really makes a difference. Our activities on the investment floor are multifaceted, and we talk here about the different ways and tools that we make use of in order to generate financial returns for our clients. Everything from ESG tools through to specific research, and our stewardship team also engage in voting on behalf of our clients, as well as speaking to companies on a regular basis. Now, I'm hoping everybody can see the next slide, I believe, is going to be Vivian. You're on mute, Vivian.
Thank you, Owen. We have just completed our recruitment for our 2020 investment trainee program, but it doesn't mean that there are no opportunities coming up. We do have some for junior analysts in the very near future, and that will be advertised on our website. The opportunity that we're offering and a part of our investment trainee program is for the young person to gain a solid understanding of the investment management industry. It's targeted at school leavers, not graduates. So anything from 16 to 18 are able to apply. It's a paid year-long placement. You also get the opportunity to work across a number of different investment teams. Also, the opportunity to obtain an industry qualification. It is CFA level 1 or equivalent. We have up to 10 places each year. Hopefully, in 2022 or 23, we can increase that to 15. And our future next year's placements will be advertised by the Investment Association and also an organization called 2020 Change. If you Google both organizations, you can sign up and get more information on about our investment trainee programs.
Thank you, Vivian. Ursula.
Johan, thank you, Vivian. Raka, just to say the answer to your question is coming up by one of my colleagues, and Vivian can pick up your culture question as well when we get to the Q&A. So please do keep questions coming in. So I suppose for all of you, you're thinking, what does this mean? What am I going to do? I don't understand the asset management. How does that impact me? The idea of this program is to allow you to come in to understand different parts of the business and understand key different asset classes and the key operational functions. Now, that's important because I think as you come in and you grow and you want to grow within your career, it gives you some core foundations as you then look to progress in your career and take on senior roles. So I'm going to start with the one at the bottom of the list, and that is risk and compliance. Risk and compliance is key. I'd say it's the bread and butter of every organisation because we have to protect ourselves, we have to protect our business, and we have to protect our clients. So what risk and compliance does is it basically is like the law enforcement of financial services. And all of us on this call will have a vested interest in how we are in terms of our risk and to make sure that we comply with the rules. So we have certain regulatory requirements, and we are regulated in the UK by the Financial Services Authority and Financial Services Cultural, and they will make sure that we are doing what we should be doing. Now, when we look at the responsibility office moving up, this is really a lot to do with our DNA as Federated Hermes and why we are different to some of our other competitors. But the responsibilities office approach to advocacy and providing support to investment teams on how to integrate environmental, social and governance issues. And that's what we hear. You may hear a lot around ESG. That's what that stands for in their investment decisions to make sure that they are doing the right thing and also offering a stewardship service. And also helping our colleagues across the firm act always in the best interest of our clients. You will then see three other teams. So the investment team, global equities, and their role is to generate excess returns over the benchmark for our clients. So this is around making money to make sure that our clients are happy. And the investment teams in terms of the real estate, which Johan linked to the work that we've done with King's Cross. And this is around looking at residential real estate properties. So King's Cross was commercial, but we look at residential properties that are benefiting society, either from environmental, societal or governance standpoints, which will also generate better low risk financial returns for our clients. And finally, last but by no means least, again, in the investment team, we have global equities and their role, the investment team, which look at multi-asset specialists in allocating across different asset classes and different strategies with the environment, social and governance issues at core. It's a systemic approach to investing. So your placement would be covering all these different areas and giving you the opportunity to really learn about what we do in this part of the sector. I'm going to hand back to Johan.
Thank you, Ursula. And I'm going to move us on to the requirements slide.
Cheers. So to touch upon some of the points as to what's required within the organization and also to be successful within some of the roles offered, would want people who are very enthusiastic, happy to ask questions, not afraid to sort of make mistakes and take risks. Having started my career only recently, I think that's probably one of the best pieces of advice I could give younger generations is to take risks strategically. Don't be afraid to make mistakes because you always learn from those lessons, and ask as many questions as you can. I got told once there's no such thing as a stupid question. And that being said, I've asked many questions that I feel may be silly, but someone else, you never know that they may be thinking the exact same thing. So definitely ask questions as and when you can. But in terms of the requirements, you'd really want like soft skills. And so those sort of comprises of being able to hold and sustain a conversation with other colleagues. In my case, it's internally within different departments and also externally with suppliers to build upon those relationships and to then ultimately have a positive outcome. So that sort of leads towards becoming a team player. Clear verbal and written communication. A lot of what I've done, and I'm sure my colleagues can also elaborate here, would be presenting reports and analysis in Excel. And when you're producing these reports, more often than not, it follows with a presentation. Therefore, your verbal skills need to be very good. So you're coming across very articulately and you're confident with what you're saying. Knowledge within Microsoft Excel, Word, and PowerPoint. That can be daunting to some people if they've never come across that package before, but it's something you learn quite quickly on the job. But if you don't have prior experience using it, I highly recommend messing around with Excel, Word, making a PowerPoint presentation. So when it does come to stepping into the corporate environment, it's not a surprise. You do understand how the software packages work. And the desire to learn about asset management, that sort of ties into my point earlier on about asking questions, being very inquisitive. That will really help get your experience up and also your knowledge. And so when you're meeting with colleagues and suppliers, if you do work in procurement with myself, you'll be able to understand what the business is doing more in detail. Numeracy skills, this is a very big part of my role. A lot of it requires numbers in terms of purchasing services for the organization and for my various business stakeholders. Good organizational skills are amazing to have because you don't really want to be forgetting about pieces of work that you promised someone. Attention to detail, second to none. I think that should be a good requirement for a life skill. I definitely recommend that. And also being creative when it comes to thinking of problem solving. So if you can find something that is not a shortcut, but can make your life a little bit easier, that's definitely one way to do it. I'll depart with a quote from Bill Gates, and I believe he said he used to give the hardest pieces of work to the latest employees because it'd get done the fastest. And so that doesn't mean you have to work extremely hard, but if you work smart, you'll be able to solve those problems quicker.
Manny, thank you. That's great. There was me thinking I had the monopoly on stupid questions, but I'm willing to let you have one or two as well. Tarandeep, a little on progression, if you would be so kind.
All right, thank you, Johan. Thanks for that. So what does your progression look like after you have your trainee program with us? Well, after completing the first 1 year with us, probably the first two are probably the most important. Firstly, you'll have a clearer idea of the business areas you really enjoyed working with and you would like to develop your career within. I know when I was young, I came out of school or uni or wherever type of study I came out of, and sometimes I felt lost. But to have that knowledge that what you like is tenfold. Secondly, you'll be able to gain industry knowledge, experience, and develop relationships, enabling you to progress your career and will provide you with the necessary skills to potentially secure a permanent role. However, if there are suitable vacancies, you'll be invited to apply for a higher apprenticeship within one of the teams that you would have worked with. Now, that will be a 18 to 24-month role. And while you're doing that higher apprenticeship, you'll also have the opportunity to further your qualifications. So you'll be able to go for if you have the interest in investment management, for example, and I can attest to this, I've actually done this myself, which is the IMC. It's a really good entry-level qualification to help you broaden your knowledge within the asset management industry and to really, gain that taste of qualifications within the industry. Or if you are looking at the residential real estate side of things, you can go for the level 3 surveying technicians apprenticeship. Now, this is, again, is an entry-level qualification, but it's really part of the real estate business that we do. And essentially, it's going out to the residential real estate and gaining all the different information from surveyors and bringing this back in-house so that we can work on the investments that we have. They're both really good ways to enter the industry, and it's never too late to learn. So yeah. And with that, Johan, I'll pass back to you.
Tarandeep, thank you. And I will stop screen share there. Number of different questions pouring in. Some of them may or may not have been answered. Just while I curate these, Tarandeep, I wonder if I might turn to you first and ask a question. You've recently joined me on the investment floor. Tell us a little bit about your journey from when you first joined Hermes sort of 6 years ago to date.
Yeah, sure. So thanks, Johan. Yeah, so rightly so, I started my journey with Federated Hermes, gosh, nearly 6 years ago now. And I started my role as a data analyst, which is, looking at any sort of data that comes in and out of the business. We were looking at reconciling, make sure it's okay, looking at a lot of the life cycle of assets, so how they travel through the how they travel through the life of the investment that we have with them, working with various stakeholders as well. And then a big part of what I did was looking at the performance side of things, which was looking at performance of funds, how funds are performing, the sort of the financial side of things. And I've really got stuck in terms of research, and I worked very closely with Johan and the investment floor, and I really knew when I started out at Hermes that I really wanted to be on the investment floor. And whenever I used to reach out to Johan, all the investment teams that I was working with, there was never a no. There was always, if I wanted to explore something or if I wanted to get involved with something, there was never a no. There was no sort of red tape or anything. And I think for me, that's what really set Hermes apart from everybody else that I've approached or worked with. And because I was willing to go the extra mile and work very closely with teams, I was able to come into the sort of progress my career to what I wanted to do, which is within the investment office. So I think it's been a good 6 years, and yeah, I'm sort of glad that I'm with Hermes. Sorry, I waffled on a bit there.
No, brilliant answer, mate. Exactly what I was hoping you would say. And in a sense, it answers the very first question which we had in some ways, which was what skill sets does Federated Hermes look for in their ideal candidate? And there you go. If you listen to Tarandeep's story, you'll hear a story about curiosity and perseverance, and somebody that had a focus on where they wanted to get to and made it happen for themselves. Just made themselves incredibly useful to the investment teams and then got the chance. There's a question here around any special support for international students. No, there isn't. I mean, we don't have a formal graduate trainee program. We are not big enough to do so, but we do recruit graduates. So lack of graduate trainee program, I would say, is not a hurdle. We are definitely looking for graduates. And another part to that question was, how about the work culture? Vivian, I think that's probably one I should look to you for.
I started in February, and February was still in a lockdown. And I can truly say that I've never felt so welcomed in a firm like Federated Hermes. I had no face-to-face meetings. and everything was done virtually. So for me, it's one of the best cultures that I've worked in, because everybody is, I just come across everybody and they seem to be very genuine. I have no complaints, but to me, the culture is what is the people, and the people of Federated Hermes that I've engaged with, which is right across the firm, have welcomed me. And I hear what people always say, we are a nice firm. So I would leave that with you. We are a nice firm to work for.
It's funny, Vivian, when I get asked that question, I always say that if you didn't believe in responsible investing, i.e. that you needed to do something more than just think about finance when you're investing people's money, you probably wouldn't want to come and work at Federated Hermes. So there's the sort of the negative, the flip side to what you said in a much more elegant way. Kine Balfour, you're asking about a military transition program offered to veterans and service leavers. No, sorry, we don't. But of course, would welcome applications for specific roles from veterans and service leavers. In fact, a number of our colleagues are indeed veterans from the services. Are there Spring Insight courses offered for students in their first year of studying? I guess we do offer internships on a fairly regular basis. They tend to be in the summer. Some of them stick around a bit longer. They make themselves that useful that I lock the door and they don't get to escape. Here we go. Next question. Margot Koenig, you're asking, do we have any opportunities for 2021 graduates? Again, yes, Margot, we absolutely do, just not a formal graduate trainee program. Hope Umukoro. Good evening. Does Federated Hermes offer placement year for postgrad students studying finance and investment banking with a placement year option in their studies? We'd be glad to hear from their panel. Ursula, do you fancy answering that one?
Oh, thank you, Johan. So it's not, I mean, similar to what Johan has said, we don't actually offer the graduate program, but we are flexible in what we can do. Something that is tailor-made as that may need looking into. So it's something that we could definitely sort of think about and take offline. But I don't necessarily think, I mean, it would be brilliant to have you in, but it's just how we would get you in and whether there would be a role that would be able to accommodate that sort of requirement.
Can I just add to that? We started to have discussions with a university, and to look at postgraduate experience and support. So it's not an outright no. It's not a yes. It's a possibility.
Agreed.
Brilliant. Thank you. I think this one I'm going to go to you in a second, Manny. As you are the numbers man. Is a numerate degree a prerequisite for an entry-level position within global equities, sales and research? Well, sales would be different to the investment side of the business, and I would say, it helps, and a degree of numeracy definitely helps, and Manny can talk more to that, but absolutely not a prerequisite that you would have a numerate degree. If I tell you that our CEO himself, an ex-fund manager, is a celebrated medieval historian and doesn't count at all well, hopefully that gives you a bit of an inkling. Manny, what do you think?
Yeah, I have to echo your point there. I'm pretty much a numbers man. I wouldn't go ahead and say I'm the best mathematician known to mankind. But when it comes to working with numbers, a lot of it is based on Excel. And so my advice would be, you wouldn't necessarily need to have a maths degree per se, or a degree that's heavily on the numeracy side. But if you're quite skilled with Microsoft Excel, that's probably more of an advantage than anything else. I probably spend about maybe 30% of my day job on Excel, creating spreadsheets, doing analysis. And so it's not necessarily knowing what X times X is or what the division of it is. It's more the formulas that go into it. So yeah, hope that answers your question.
Super, Manny, thank you. And Kane, I see that you also asked about when are your graduate roles opening for those of us graduating in June, July 2022? And my answer to that would be just keep your eyes on our website. There are entry-level graduate roles appearing all the time, and you would be able to apply for those whenever you can. Dylan, no worries, you missed the first 15 minutes. That was the best bit. It was the bit I did. Just kidding, it wasn't that good. Opportunities for graduates. Yeah, no graduate trainee program, Dylan, but yes, we do have graduate roles that are available for those folks that have just graduated across all areas of the business. So you'd be very welcome to apply for those. Robert Cutler, I hope that answers your question as well, I think. And Dylan, you've had a supplementary question. May I know if the company sponsors tier 2 visas for foreign students? Typically we don't, Dylan. Although if you twisted my arm and it was an exceptional candidate, yeah, maybe I'd look into it. I would, I promise. And going for the third question in a row, Dylan, is there an email which I can send my CV and cover letter to, or are the roles on the website? Yeah, open roles would be on the website. But I would always welcome a speculative CV and cover letter. You could find all of us on LinkedIn. Great place, great source of information. And you can send all manner of harassing CVs and letters to us there. So yeah, knock yourselves out. Andy, I love this question, Andy Turnbull. Where do you see Federated Hermes Investments' role in addressing the climate and biodiversity crisis over the next decade? Who would like to take a crack at that? I could go on for about 3 hours to that question, so I'll go last.
I think you're the expert.
I know I'm not the expert, Vivian.
That's why I think you should answer.
So I'll give a very quick answer while other people maybe have a chance to think, and then I'll get a few others to comment as well. So what do I think our role is? Well, I think the only way that we're going to tackle the climate crisis and the biodiversity and ecosystem issues that we face is from a systems perspective. What do I mean by that? Sure, asset managers like Federated Hermes have a role to play, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But we are only one small piece in the puzzle. Everybody else has a role to play, and that is from governments issuing policy, regulators with new regulation, corporates changing their corporate activity and the way in which they behave, right through to us as individuals. So if you have any investments, or you're saving, or you have a pension, then you can influence how we approach climate and biodiversity crisis, what we can do about it. Our role as asset managers, I think, is twofold. So we talked a little bit in the intro about this idea of allocating capital, not just for financial reasons, but also for environmental, social, and governance reasons. And then the second and most important part about being good stewards of that capital. So don't just invest and leave it and walk away and forget about it. You need to be involved with your investments. And that's what we do for our clients. We get involved, we talk to companies, we are constantly nudging them towards a more sustainable world, because we all know that's the biggest crisis, existential crisis, that the planet currently faces. We are struggling to limit temperature rise to 1.5 degrees today. We need to be taking action now. Folks, who else would like to pitch in? Ursula, thank you.
No, I mean, beautifully said, Johan. And I think for me as well, it's around our people. We need to attract the best talent here that really believe in our purpose. And that's what's going to give us sort of that competitive, for companies like Hermes. I mean, we have competitors and they are doing this as well, but this has been in, you know, we shared that our timeline and how long we've been here. You know, this, we live and breathe this within our organization. So part of it is continuing to attract talent, continuing to do the research. One of the things that we recently launched this week is an app called Geeky Zero. And this is allowing us as employees to track our own individual carbon footprint. So we are taking ownership in our personal capacity that this is important. because you kind of need to walk the walk. So I think part of this in the bigger piece is we all play a role. Everybody in society needs to play a role. But in terms of investing and doing the right thing, that always comes down to a human, which is individuals within our firm, in Johan's team and in other teams, making those right decisions. So I think people are key to this.
And just to echo your point there, Ursula, within my team in procurement, we have a really big focus upon sustainability. And as part of our governance, when we vet suppliers, they have to fill out a environmentally friendly, I can't remember the name of the document now, which isn't very good because I did one today, but there's a document that suppliers need to fill out, and it basically gives us an understanding as to how sustainable they are. And this is from a environmental perspective. This is modern slavery, just so we know that our supply chain is as sustainable as it could possibly be, from a environmental perspective and a people's perspective. And so I believe that in the coming years and months, as we recruit more people who are heavily invested in sustainability, we'll get better with it. I know no one in this world is perfect, but we can get as close to that as possibly can.
That's brilliant, Manny. Thank you. Yeah, I had a wonderful conversation the other day with our head of IT, and he'd been doing some research on our part of our carbon footprint that we contribute from our IT usage, and he was telling me that an email is many multiples in terms of carbon compared to a Teams message. So yeah, I'm abandoning emails. So don't anybody email me. I'm only responding to Teams now. That's it. More great questions coming in. So Killian, Pather, thank you all so much for the presentation. And Johan for the added humor. I didn't make that up. It actually says that. That's amazing. By the way, if my children were here, they'd be calling me off at this point and telling me to shut up. I'm particularly interested in impact and ESG investing. Could you say more about your current allocations? I understand that many ESG investments can represent higher risk positions. No. How are you able to circumvent this, and overall, how is the deal pipeline for your division structured? To what extent is this modulated by your clients? Let me answer that last bit, and I'm going to, and I'll waffle for a bit, and then I'll pass to Tarndi, because he's at the coalface, not me. It is entirely modulated by our clients. Our clients give us specific allocations for how they wish their capital to be invested. So it might be a global equities mandate. It might be a global high yield mandate. It might be a UK property mandate. It might be a European infrastructure mandate. So to that extent, it's very much client directed. Where we then invest that money is entirely our decision. And actually, I would argue very strongly that an ESG investment is in fact lower risk. If you think about what, if you're investing in, particularly in companies that are ESG leaders in their sectors, or buildings that are have a very low carbon footprint relative to their competitors, they are the least risky in terms of transition risk as we move to a net zero and Paris aligned world. So I would argue very strongly that ESG investments actually carry a lower risk than more normal investments. Tarndi, did you want to talk a little bit about how you see our ESG work, because you've done some amazing research with our credit team on spreads and ESG issues.
Yeah, cheers. Thanks, Owen. Yes, so in terms of ESG investments and risk, especially within the fixed income area, I did some work with the fixed income team, and essentially, in a nutshell, fixed income investments are sort of, an investor will have some funds or some cash. They will invest. They'll go out to a company, and they will give them that cash, and then they will get some periodic return, and they'll get the lump of money at the end of it. And what we did was we looked at the overall risk within that. So lending your money, what is the overall risk? And we looked at that, which is something called spreads. And we looked at that versus the ESG metrics that we have in-house, which we call QA-ESG scores, but in-house we have these scores. And we looked at the relationship between that, and we actually found that if you have a higher QESG score, which is better, then you have a lower risk or lower spread. So you are therefore sort of a less risky asset from an investor's point of view. So you're more willing to give up your cash and have some stable return and be able to get your money back at the end of that term. So yes, they are actually less risky than they are more. So I hope that sort of answers your question.
Brilliant, Andy. Thank you. So a cheaper cost to borrow for those that
exactly.
are more interested in ESG investments. I think I'd also add that ESG is a very broad church, and there are many, many different ways of doing it. At one end of the spectrum, you have simple negative screening, so deciding not to invest or exclude companies that are the worst according to ESG criteria. Right through at the other end of the spectrum, more complicated impact investing, where you are really looking for additionality and materiality in the type of investments that you make, because there is a very specific, tangible alteration to the product and service that comes out of that investment, which is making an ESG difference. So there's a real spectrum, something for everybody in there, I think. Thanks for that question, Killian. That's a goodie. Robert Kotler, it's interesting to hear that you all have deep interests. Can you elaborate on how do you manage to keep developing those interests? And perhaps, how do these interests help you in your day-to-day role? What a great question. Well, I'll take a... Oh, Manny's... Look, Manny just can't wait to tell us. Go on, mate.
This is just a really relevant example. And so myself and Vivian have a really interesting interest, which is aviation. So that's anything to do with airports, airplanes, and traveling. And so when we first met, which I believe was about 2 weeks ago or so, maybe a little bit longer than that, we spent 45 minutes on a 30-minute call talking about Emirates Airlines, Heathrow Airport, and then a couple of other airlines that we flew on, and then about 5 minutes about the work that I needed to speak to her about. So the reason why I'm telling you this is because we established that relationship personally, instantly. And since then, I've worked with Vivian on 2 contracts, and both of them have gone very swimmingly. I managed to get them turned around quite quickly because I've built up that interest with her, whereby it's not specifically to do about work. So one thing that I like to do is get to know people personally over professionally, because we are humans at the end of the day. I appreciate that we're here to do a job, but we also have feelings, emotions. Sometimes they're sad, sometimes they're happy. And I think it's paramount that when you're working with people, just to see what they like, see what they get into, because you never know, someone might know something that you would love to know about. And in this instance, and when it comes to airplanes, I go plane spotting quite often. And so kind of says it all when we spend 45 minutes talking about airplanes and 5 minutes talking about work. But yeah, we didn't get that contract done in the end. It's a relevant example to the question, so I had to say it.
I'm just tempted to cut that conversation off right there.
Right, Kevin, I'll jump in on that one. And Vivian and Manny, my brother is the head engineer at Heathrow Airport. So if you want to do plane spotting even closer, have a conversation with me. Both my father and my brother work in that industry. Now, for me, I only joined in August, as I said in my intro, and when I join an organisation, it has to align with my personal values. It's very important to me. I left an organisation because I felt it went against my personal values. And at that time, I was only 24 years old. So, you know, I'm happy to make those choices. For me, Federated Hermes, once again, aligns with my values. If for those of you that have had a chance to look at our website, we established in 2015 the Federated Hermes Pledge. And when I thought about applying for a role here, part of the 2 elements of the pledge that stood out to me, remembering that things need to align with my personal values, was I will act ethically and with integrity, and I will act with consideration for our community and the environment now and in the future, and encourage others to do the same. Every single employee at Federated Hermes has signed that pledge. And when we were taken over by Federated 3 years ago, but the full transaction has only recently happened, employees in the US also have signed the pledge. So I think that's really important. From my time being here, how do I keep interest? It is exactly to what Manny has said. I don't necessarily talk about aeroplanes, but everybody that I have met over the last 6 weeks are extremely passionate. The element of sort of intelligence and interest in what they do is definitely there. And somebody that I spoke to who's worked for this company for 11 years, I spoke to him at the beginning of this week, said to me, Ursula, I actually wrote it down. I have the best job in the world. That's what he said. And he said, for me, not necessarily what others may think of my role, but for me to be able to be currently working from home, researching and finding out what's right and where we should invest is for him the best job in the world. So I think that sums it up. If you can find something and you feel it aligns with your values, you're around good, interesting people that like planes, but other things, that's how you keep your interest.
There we go. Awesome. I should confess too that I use the pandemic to pick up some online studying, kind of interested in, and is relevant to my day job. So I did some postgraduate work with the folks at Stanford on renewable energy, which has been eye-opening. And I'm just about to start, so again, some postgrad work at St Andrews online in sustainable aquaculture. So I'm going to become a seaweed expert. Not talking about planes though. No. Dylan, may I know who your main competitors are? Sure. I suppose everybody's a competitor kind of way, Dylan. But very specifically, you'll have managers like Impax Asset Management in the impact area. Robeco are a very good ESG, generalist ESG manager. So lots of competitors out there for sure. Killian again. What do you make of ESG company scoring? Tarandeep, I can feel this one's coming to you and me. I've read a tiny bit about some of the regulatory systems and their failures. How are you able to assess the sustainability of securities you buy? Ciphering out those masquerading greenwashing from those with genuine forward-looking strategies. Well, great question. And I could bore you far longer than Ursula and Manny could about planes on this one. They're a good starting point. That's what I'm going to say. Company scores, great starting point, but you need to dive in. If you don't know what there'll only be a handful of material issues are, probably 3 or 4 levels down from that top level score, you've probably missed the point. So scoring, good starting point, but dive into the details, Killian. Margot asks, Tarandeep, does Federated Hermes have its own ESG evaluation framework? Well, you have done some research with it. So over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Johan. Great question. Yes, we do. So as I alluded to before, I did a lot of, I have been doing a lot of research with the Responsibility Office who keep our in-house scores. And we have a set framework there, and we do a lot of in-house analysis and you know, linking ESG to the actual tangible financials. But a lot of that we alluded to before. So we do, yeah.
Brilliant, mate. Thank you, Vivian. One for you from Andy Turnbull. What does FHI's working dynamic look like as we tentatively emerge from the pandemic? Has your business adapted well to a new way of working? And what have you lost, if anything? Sounds like you have a strong culture that's transcended the challenges of remote working. Yeah, we do. We didn't have a choice.
That is true. And we have gone back last week to hybrid working. Our colleagues are doing 2 or 3 days a week. We started off with 25% in the office and it's going up to 50%. So we are doing a hybrid working. And there is a review going on at the moment and see how we go on into 2022. But yes, hybrid working, I've been at home. I haven't been in the office yet. I have to let you into a secret. I haven't been in the office since I started in February, but I have made a lot of contacts and a lot of friends working from home, working virtually. That's what I have to say. Owen.
Brilliant, Vivian. Thank you. We're 5 minutes from the top of the hour. Two more questions, and then I'm going to ask. I've got a surprise question up my sleeve for my fellow panelists. Mark Cox asks, I recently completed a university project researching cleaner technology in order to better inform investing. I really enjoyed it. I bet you did. Which area of Federated Hermes would this type of work best fit into? You could fit anywhere in the investment floor. We love that kind of stuff. In particular, we have an innovation lab. So this is a bunch of researchers who spend time trying to bridge the gap between finance and climate science. You'd find your home there. You'd talk their language, I think, Mark. Anonymous question, can you talk about your exposure to Chinese equities and the recent government regulation changes? Yeah, I could tell you all about it. We do have some exposure. It's looking quite cheap now. It wasn't cheap when we started, but it is now. About $1 trillion was wiped off Chinese big tech names over the summer. Fortunately, we're not too heavily exposed for our clients. Excellent. Right, one final question from me, gang, which is, in one word, can you tell me what you wanted to be when you were growing up? And that's, of course, assuming that you have grown up. I haven't decided yet for myself.
I'll go first. I wanted to be an air hostess or a pilot.
By surprise.
No way, that's uncanny. Go on, Ursula.
I wanted to be in CID, so I wanted to solve crimes.
Fantastic. Manny.
Yeah, I wanted to be a pilot. I feel like I could have guessed that one.
I could have guessed that one. That was all my money was on that. Turn deep.
I actually wanted to be a truck driver.
Nice. Do you know they're in short supply, mate, at the moment? You can make a lot, I'm told.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact,
And you?
do you know what I heard recently? That there are some airline pilots who've quit being airline pilots to be truckers because they get paid more.
Wow.
I did one of those career surveys when I was about 12, and the job match that came up for me was fireman. Mystification. So there we go, folks. Thank you very much. We are coming up to our end. Hope you all enjoyed getting to know all about Federated Hermes and from my wonderful colleagues, and that it's been useful to you. As we said, no formal graduate trainee program, but we would love to hear from you if you have an interest in joining us here on our responsible investment journey. Many people have been asking about recordings, and all of these sessions are recorded and are on the Skills Workshop website after the session. So have a look, and don't forget you can still register for the upcoming sessions too. There are 33 firms more to go. So tomorrow we have M&G, another asset manager who invests, like ourselves, across the full range of asset classes on behalf of long-term savings of millions of people across the globe. And that's all we have time for. So a big, big thank you to Veronique in the background doing the tech, and to my wonderful colleagues, including the airline spotters. Please do connect with us on LinkedIn and follow us and send any questions that you have. Guys, thanks for your questions. It's been our absolute pleasure.
Bye, everyone.